Hello and welcome to today's webinar on our new version 11 release. My name is Harold Dyke. I'm founder of Silect, and along with me is Mike Sargent. Mike is our senior most developer, and he has been been with Silect almost since the beginning and has been certainly instrumental in building the products that we're going to present to you today. Again, this is being recorded, so if you need to drop off, a recording will be made available to you. And thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for trusting Silect to help you address and solve some of your IT challenges. We certainly pride ourselves on our relationships with our customers and with our user base. And we pride ourselves on listening very closely to your feedback. And I think what you're going to see today in the version 11 release is the result of direct feedback from our user community. This is now our 11th major release of the product. Our first release goes way back to 2005, and I think that was that was before SCOM was even SCOM. So we've been at this a long time, but we still feel there's still more to do, and there's more value that we can build into those products. So by way of agenda for today, we're going to keep it very focused on what's new in version 11. We're going to cover off these three products, the free version of MP Author, MP Author Professional, as well as MP Studio. And we're going to focus on showing you what's new as opposed to trying to describe it to you. We do have, there is a Q&A window that we encourage you to use. We do want to have your questions, and we will answer them as best we can throughout the webinar. We do have some time at the end that we'll carve out to answer any questions that we haven't been able to get to during the event. And we do want to, I will touch base a little bit on, give you an update on our Silect Portal product, and we'll close off with giving the details of version 11, how to get it, when it's going to be available, how to upgrade, et cetera, et cetera. So, of course, today's webinar is about version 11, and the question is, what's new in version 11? Well, the answer is there's a lot that's new in version 11 across all three products that we're going to be demonstrating today. So, I think the great news is we're not just updating our licensing products, we're adding a bunch of stuff to our free MP Author product as well. So if you're using MP Author, as soon as version 11 is released, we certainly encourage you to upgrade and take advantage of these updated features. Today's demonstration is going to highlight some of the key features across all three products. So we're going to talk certainly about SCOM 2022 support. We've updated the suite of MPs in the releases to ensure full compatibility with SCOM 2022. We've got some pretty dramatic improvements to the authoring experience with a new event expression builder, which we'll see, as well as new WMI monitor and rule authoring capabilities. And we've got a really cool new feature that we've added to MP Studio called the SCOM Explorer. And Mike's going to spend a bit of time on that. And basically, it's going to let you find anything in your SCOM environment quickly and easily. And there's a few things along the way that we'll show you that we've added to version 11. So with that, let me just go over and make sure Mike is ready to present and has presenter rights. Mike, over to you.
If you can hear me, we're all set.
We are all set to go.
Excellent. So in my demonstration, I'm just going to go through, I'm going to use MP Author, Author Pro, and Studio just to show the interoperability and that sort of stuff. In Author, I'm just going to create an MP for SCOM 2022. I'll create a service monitor. Some of you will have seen that before. Some of you won't. Then I'm going to load the same MP into MP Author Pro, and I'm going to show the changes to the event rule. That's using the new expression builder. And I'll also create a WMI monitor. Then I'm going to go into MP Studio, and I'm going to demonstrate SCOM Explorer, which is an MP Studio only feature, and you'll see why. It connects to management servers. So if I go to my next slide here, that's not actually what I want to show. So let's go to MP Author. So here's MP Author. For those of you who haven't seen it before, It's pretty straightforward, menu bar across the top. I'm just going to create a new management pack. Our wizards all tend to have an introduction screen. They collect some information. We're going to call this one V11 demo. Some more information, in this case, where we're going to save the file. Here is where, when we're creating a management pack, we get to choose what version of SCOM we want to support with this and what type of MP this is, whether it's a Windows MP, whether we're going to be collecting data for SNMP, or whether we want to use Linux. In this case, I'm going to create a Windows 2022 management pack. What you'll see when we change different versions is the version numbers of the MPs down here. So I'll just switch back and forth, and you can see that there's some changes there. That just means that we're referencing specific versions that are applicable to those. If we change between Windows and SNMP, we get a completely different set of references. And of course, I can't do that in Author. But all right, take my word for it. And then we can choose what to build. I'm just going to build an empty management pack here, and I'm going to fill it in myself. So our menus always end up with a summary here. You can go back and change things if you want to. We really don't need to in this case. So when the MP is open, here on the right, we have a list of all of the elements that can be in a management pack. And so we'll go through that in a bit more detail. In the center, we have information about the selected thing here. So with this MP, we really don't have anything there except there should be a language pack, classes, and those are empty. But that's okay, because what we're going to do now is we've created the MP. I'm going to create a monitor. So this is going to be a service monitor. Here on the introduction page, we specify what system we'd like to get the information for. So this is going to fetch the list of services from the named computer. You can use the browse button. You can go to any of the computers on your network that you have access to. There's ways to specify the credentials, etc. You can even manually enter things. We find that browsing is generally what you want to do 99% of the time. So we've gone to, this is my local system, and it's fetched a list of all of the services that are running, shows the display name and the service name here. You can filter this list down if you want to, just to simplify and find things. So if I type in audio, those are the endpoints that have the name audio in them. I just need to select a service here. Microsoft Office, click to run. Here we select the target. This is where this new monitor will run. So it'll run on all systems that have Windows operating system. A little later in my demonstration, I'll show why you would want to change that. And then we have the parent monitor. So this is how the health rolls up. And so for a service monitor, it's typically availability, because if the service isn't running, it's usually a problem with availability. Something won't be available to customers. Here we can specify the name of the monitor. We fill this in with, the name of the management pack, the name of the target, the name of the service, and then .service.monitor here. You're free to change that however you want. And I'm not going to change it for the demonstration, but you can certainly go in and change that. We strongly recommend you come up with a good naming scheme that's consistent within your company. Here we specify the run as credentials. Now, when you're reading service information, you probably don't need to specify run as. So I'm not going to do anything here, but we do allow this in I think all of the places where it's actually necessary. You can actually specify additional run as credentials if you need to. Then we specify the health. If the service is running, then the health state is healthy. This allows you to change it so that a service, if it shouldn't be running, it could be unhealthy. It's a rare situation, but in most cases, certainly for monitors, we do allow you to specify what's healthy and what's unhealthy, and it's not always obvious. Service, probably 99% of the time, you're only concerned whether a service is running. And then we can generate an alert here. So this will generate a warning alert. It'll automatically resolve when the monitor returns to a healthy state. So if the service isn't running, it would generate the alert. When the service starts again, it'll automatically close the alert. You want to do this as much as possible just to cut down on the number of spurious alerts that are showing up in the console. There's a display name for the alert. Again, you can change that, the priority, severity, and then the description here. And for each monitor, we've put in what we feel is sort of the best information we can provide. You know, it's going to show you the service name, and it's going to show you what computer it's on. We don't know anything else about that, like how important that service is to you or anything like that. So this is all we can provide, but you can edit this and you can put in additional properties here from the service information that was fetched, from the target, from what it's hosted on. You can even put in information about the group if you want to. Finally, we have our summary. You can go back, you can review, you can change anything you want. Click finish and it's done. So that's very quick through this, and I need to remember where the path is here. It got stored in temp, did it? Okay, that's fine. Let me just break out of this for a second because I need to go to my desktop and start Author. This will be Author Pro running. I'm going to open that same file, which is going to be in, oops, it was already temp. We should have modified. What did I miss here, folks?
I think it was in the C/temp, Mike.
That is ctemp. I'm not sure where it's gotten off to. This is rather embarrassing. Let's come back to author free and see what it says. Oh, free events. There's a subfolder. Okay, so now we should be able to find it. So in Pro, we'll do open. We want to go to temp, and there should be something called free events. And that's this one here. And so this is the same file. We've got our monitor here. Now, what we want to show here is we're actually going to go through and demonstrate some of the particularly new features. So one of the things that came up is for a number of years, and I guess I should go back to my slide for this. This is going to go back to the beginning, isn't it? Worse than that, it always chooses to put the display on the wrong page. So earlier versions of our products only allowed one or two properties to be specified in expressions, and it didn't expose all the event logs, only the legacy events, you know, application, security system, a couple others. A number of customers have asked about this over the years, and so for V11, we've made some significant changes. You can select all of the event logs that are available on a computer, and we now allow the expression builder, which allows arbitrary complexity and unlimited number of properties, and that's in the event rule and event monitor wizards. Some of you may have already seen the expression builder. It is used in some other wizards, some of the SNMP wizards, the group wizard, etc. One of the things that the event wizards show is they'll show values in a drop-down, so you can select them. So for most, but not all, the properties, you can click on a drop-down and select known values. And for some properties, we show a friendly name, but when you substitute it in, we put in the correct numeric value. So if I come back to Author Pro here, we want to go, and I'm going to create an event rule here. Again, this is the system we're going to fetch the data from. This is our target, which is probably sufficient here. This is us going out, and I love how things periodically pop back. This was, it was reading in all of the available event logs. There's something like 1,100 of them on this machine that's selected here. So before, this list would have had, you know, 8 or 9 entries on it. Now it has about 1,100 that you can choose if you want to. I'm going to stick with application, although it's not going to matter. So because this is a new event, we've actually pre-populated a sample expression here. Event display number equals, well, something. We don't actually have a value. We don't know what value you want. And publisher name equals something that you need to select. This is a typical case, and so you can come in here, you can select an event number, you can select a publisher name. SQL Server is always a good one. And that's everything you would need. And this is probably what people do about 90% of the time. But what you couldn't do before is you couldn't add a third expression in here. So let's say I wanted to also ensure that the event category was logging recovery. Now I can do that. And that was something that you could never do in our wizards before. But he says resizing the wizard, and you'll see why. As I mentioned, it's arbitrary complexity now. This is a general expression. So we can add an OR clause here. And underneath that OR clause, I can put in that I want to only match usernames. Let's use a hypothetical case where all of our admin users start with the letters AA in our organization. So we match this regular expression, has to start with 2 A's. That's the case we want. And maybe we only want it for another alternate case where the description contains admin group. So now we have, in a few seconds, a very complex expression, and there's really no limit on how complex you can make this if you want to. We can go back here. I'm going to change this name. We fill in all the information here, and as you might notice, something got truncated here with, contains admin group. The name is just so long, we had to truncate it at 255 characters. And that all works now, but I'm just going to change this to something a little shorter just so it looks a little better for us. Good old test number 23. Again, you'll probably want to come up with your own naming schemes that you want to use. So we can generate an alert. We can put, as I mentioned, other things in here. So for instance, we had put in the, what was it we actually put in? It was the event category. You can put text in here. You can wrap it. You can put it, well, the description would probably show up anyways. So the description should be here somewhere. As mentioned, you can put in target properties. It's not hard to find the computer name, that sort of stuff, but that's from the host here, the principal name here. But there's other things you may want from operating system. You might want to know what version of the operating system is. You can put that sort of stuff in. There's also suppression and custom alert fields you can fill in. I'm not going to do that for this demonstration, but I just want to mention them. Frequency, event rules typically don't need any frequency. As soon as the event comes in, they'll run. And here's our summary. As mentioned, we could go back and change anything we need to, but we really don't want to in this case. So I'm just going to bring up the XML. Here's that expression we created. It's an AND with the display number and the publisher name and the event category and one of these, OR. So the username has to match the regular expression, or the event description has to contain admin group. That's all there. And of course, you could always go back in with the wizard and edit them again. So if I wanted to change this from 254 to 1000, finish, it's done. And we'll just very quickly bring up the XML. There it is. So that's also in the event monitor wizard. I think everybody's going to find that very useful. As mentioned, a lot of this is customer requests. Most people, 2 properties was sufficient, but not for everybody. And so once or twice a year, someone would say, how do I add a 3rd property? So we looked at the customer request and we came up with a very general method of doing it with the expression builder. And that's what we try to do. We listen to your problems and we try to come up with general solutions that not only meet your needs, but should meet the needs of more customers in a general fashion. So going back to my slides here, the next thing I wanted to demonstrate was WMI rules and monitors. For those of you who were at MP University in the fall last year, I went through this and a much longer presentation. I'm going to trim this down fairly much. But we've got a link here that takes us to our YouTube channel where we have the much longer discussion. You want to skip forward to about 8:45. For those of you who haven't seen it, the scenario was that one of my devs came back and he said he'd had a computer failure overnight. His little NUC box had overheated and shut down in the middle of the night. The fan failed or something like that. And there was really nothing out of the box to monitor it. But we knew we could get that information out of WMI, so we've added these new rules and monitors. We're going to use something called Open Hardware Monitor, which I'm not entirely sure I've even got running on this computer right now, but I better because it's needed for the demonstration. I'll get that in a second. Here's some links, and we want it to run on startup. Open Hardware Monitor collects and displays information. So for instance, this one is for one of my Hyper-V hosts here. It has an Intel Xeon processor with 6 cores, and it can get the individual temperatures for the cores as well as the packet and a lot of other demonstration. So we're going to create a class and discover systems running Open Hardware Monitor. And then I'm going to, on each system that's running Open Hardware Monitor, I'm going to create a class and discover the CPUs, because obviously computers can have more than one CPU. And then for each CPU, we're going to discover the temperature sensors. As you saw, there were 6 temperature sensors there. We'll create a relationship so the temperature sensors are hosted by the CPU. That's a bit of a manual step. And then I'm going to create a monitor to raise alerts. So as mentioned, I have to make sure I've got Open Hardware Monitor running. And let me just quickly check here, and I don't. Yes, I want that. And it should be showing up here. So on this machine, I have one CPU. It's a different type. This actually has 8 cores, but it'll let me select and demonstrate properly. So we'll come back to that in a little while. We want to come here. So I actually want to go down to my crib sheet to get this all right, because I've got this. So we want to create a class, and we want to discover systems running Open Hardware Monitor. So again, this is the computer we're going to go to. We're going to look at all machines running Windows operating system. And we're going to query. We want to look at the SimV2 space, or namespace, and we want to look for Win32 process, which happens to be after all this perf raw data noise. Process. I'm going to just expand the caption and sort it and go down to the O's. Open Hardware Monitor. And so what we want to collect is, where are we here? Sorry, just looking at my crib sheet. I want to select the caption. I actually don't care what it is, but we want to make sure that the caption, so we get is selected on this side, so we get the where clause. So this is going to run on all Windows 32 operating systems. And where there's a process where the caption is openhardwaremonitor.exe, we're going to create a class for that. That's fine there. We can use the default here. I am going to change the targets, the names a bit. You'll see why. I've actually got to hard code something, and I just want to be able to paste it in, so I need to make sure that my names are correct. This is going to be based on local application. Open Hardware Monitor is a local application that's running, so that's a good choice here. The discovery name doesn't matter, and we'll use the default schedule. Again, our summary, we could go back and change things. Now that we've found computers that are running Open Hardware Monitor, we want to find the CPUs. So again, we're going to do another WMI class discovery. But this time, our target is only going to be the computers where Open Hardware Monitor has been running. So that is any Windows operating system computer that also has Open Hardware Monitor exe process running. So it's not all computers. We've greatly reduced the number of computers that are going to be selected here. The namespace we want here is we're actually going to go to the Open Hardware Monitor namespace. We want to look at the hardware, and we actually want to, the double click got me. We want to select CPU, and the information we're going to collect here is the hardware type, the identifier, the name, and the parent, where the hardware type is CPU. We can use the default properties here, and again, I need to get the name right. We're going to base this on local application. It's not the best choice. It's going to work for the time being. There will be some improvements in a future version of MP Studio and MP Author that helps with this. So now that we've discovered the classes, we want to discover the temperature sensors. This is going to start to look fairly familiar. We want the CPU class here. We're going to run this discovery against each CPU. We want to look again at Open Hardware Monitor, but this time we want to look at the sensors. And the data we want to collect is the identifier, the index, the min-max values that have been recorded, the name, and the parent, and the sensor type. And we actually want to have our expression be where the parent, let me just choose one here, sorry. Temperature. Just so you can see the values here, where the parent is a CPU, and we want to match an identifier, and we'll actually make a small change to that. Sensor type. Okay. Let me make sure I've got this thing right. Where parent is equal to, and sensor type is temperature. Okay. Now, what we need to do here, and, oh no, that's done later, sorry. So we're going to choose, we can use the default properties here. We want to get the name right. The base class, we're going to use local application, but we're going to change that manually in a minute, okay? The discovery identification really doesn't matter, and our schedule. So there's our summary, and we finish. Now, we need to actually make a change to make this work, and this is what I've said is something we will be working on in a future version of MP Studio. But I think this is valuable just to show what you can do. I need to introduce a relationship between the CPU and the sensor, the temperature sensor. And the reason for that is we need to use some of the information from the CPU class. So we need this relationship. So this is defining a hosting relationship between the CPU class and the temperature class. When we do that, we also need to change the base type here for the temperature. Because local application is already hosted by Windows Computer, we actually need to change that. In this case, we're going to use System Application Component, which is a completely correct thing to use here. But that lets us set up the hosting properly. So there's our relationship has been created. And just for completeness, I'm actually going to give the relationship a proper display name here. This is one of the things that's new in V11. We now have a larger field that you can drop down to edit things here, and some of them have, some of them have always had, a drop-down list here for things that only have selected values. We've improved some of those. There's still room to go there. So now that we've got all the classes set up, I actually can go back here to my SCOM, and I go to Discovered Inventory, which I think is looking. So here's the temperature sensors that have been discovered by an earlier version of this management pack. Remember, I said there were 6 cores here, so 0 through 6. The 6th one is actually the temperature of the whole package. So that's fine. And then we want to create the monitor. So now we want to go to monitors, and this is the part that's really new, a WMI performance monitor. We'll get the data from the current system. We're going to look at the temperature classes. We're going to look at our namespace again, and we're going to go back to open hardware and the sensor, and we want to choose one of the temperatures just so we have some values here. And we want to look at the value. So for a monitor, the only thing we're really trying to collect is the value. And we want the identifier here in the where clause. Now, what you see is this identifier sort of hard codes exactly one of the temperature sensors on one of the CPUs, which is not ideal. But I'm going to show you how we change that very easily in a second. So here's our expression. What we do is we highlight the value here, and we fill in the identifier from the target. So this is the temperature identifier. So for each temperature class that was created, this is the identifier, and it'll select the right data for us. There's other information we can, of course, put in there from the host, etc. We don't need any of that right now. We would normally put in better names for the object and the counter. We don't need to do that. And so for here, we're going to, for our instance, we're just going to put in the identifier. That's the same one we did last time. And we've defaulted to the value property, which is correct in this case. There's, any of these can be changed if you want to. We can give it a better name. We can choose run as, which we don't really need in this case. One thing I'll do here is I'm just going to change this to a simple threshold of 70 degrees. I don't know if you noticed, but the temperatures tend to hover in the high 50s to mid 60s. So a 70 is a pretty good value here. We have our summary here: healthy if less than or equal to 70, and critical if greater than 70. We would normally generate an alert, and I'd probably put some more thought into the description here, our summary, and there's our monitor. And that's pretty much everything to show there. So on that note, we'll come back to our slides. We're going to restart. Oh, I know there's a for the current slide and swap them back and forth. So SCOM Explorer is the next thing I want to show. And this is a new feature in MP Studio. Connects to a management group, basically sucks in all the information about all the management packs that have been installed on the management server. Ties them together in our version of a health model so that you can quickly find any element. So you can search, and it's sort of a free text search for something that occurs in the name field, the display name, the description, or even the comment field. Comment isn't used very often, but it's certainly available to you. And you can also search for all the elements via their ID. And so occasionally you will see, say, an event log entry that says, workflow and gives an ID had a problem. This actually lets you find them by ID. I know Kevin Holman has some articles on how to search for that information in the SQL database, in the SCOM database, but you need access to the SCOM database to do that. This does it, and it's very quick. Once we've found those elements, you can show things like the properties of the element, actually look at the XML directly, and you can also navigate easily to all the other elements. So for instance, a unit monitor uses a unit monitor type to actually do the collection. So there's a button, you click it, and you immediately zoom down to the unit monitor from the monitor type. From there, you'll see things like the condition detections and data sources and probe actions. You can drill down through those. You can see who references things, and we'll be showing all of that very quickly. The next thing you can do is you can find class instances by their ID. And this can be really useful if you're looking at event log entries and all there is a GUID and you don't actually know what specifically it's talking about. Now I'm going to demonstrate that one in particular. And if you look at classes that have instances, you can bring up the list of instances. If a class is a group, you can also bring up the group members. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, just getting dry. You can also explore a single MP and all of the MPs it references directly. This uses fewer resources and it loads a little faster. That's not going to be a major issue in most cases. This is actually fairly memory safe. It doesn't really use that much memory for what it's doing. So I don't think that loading a single MP is something you will do frequently. And there's some restrictions to it. It can't necessarily show everything. So base class images, where the images are defined in other MPs that aren't directly referenced in the MP hierarchy, won't show up. There's some other cases like that. But it's really useful for looking at MPs which have not yet been deployed. And that's the case I think you'll find that you want to use it. But generally, the whole management group, SCOM Explorer, is better. And finally, I want to describe just the difference between live data and the snapshot. So when we look up class instances and group members and relationships and that, we're looking at live data. As soon as the query is done, we go out to SCOM, we look at the data that's there immediately. So there's no refresh needed. If we were looking at, for instance, group members, and a new member is added to a group, the second you ask to show it, that'll show up immediately. Same if it's deleted, etc. But for the management packs and elements, we take a snapshot. So when SCOM Explorer runs, we fetch all that data, and we don't update it automatically. So if an MP is added or deleted, or a new version of an MP is installed, that won't show up in the SCOM Explorer immediately. There's a couple of reasons for that, but the big one is we wanted to keep consistency. We don't want things changing underneath for sort of structural elements that you're looking at. But there's a refresh button, so you can refresh automatically. So if we go to MP Studio now, here's how easy it is to get to SCOM Explorer. You simply right-click and you say Explore Management Group. This progress dialog is it loading the entire management group. So at this point, we have a listing of everything that's in from every management pack. If you look at the thickness of that thumb that I'm dragging, it shows you exactly how much data got pulled in that quickly. And there's all the different elements. So there's management packs. It's probably not the easiest way to do it. Aggregate monitors and all that sort of stuff. You can choose to see what is filtered. You can filter what's shown simply by selecting from this drop-down. So if I only wanted to see classes, I can filter it. And now this is just a list of classes, which is still a pretty long list. I don't know what's shorter. Don't worry about that. But you can also do searching, so you can filter further. So here it is. We're only showing the classes that are defined that have the phrase Microsoft and 365 somewhere in either the name, display name, or description. We have navigation here. You can go back to previous, you can go forward, that sort of stuff. I'll talk about refresh. Well, refresh is very easy. If you want to reload the data, you want to reload the health model, you can click that. And there we go. If a new MP had been added or updated, etc. And just while we're talking about it, this selects the management group that we're going to fetch the live data from. So because we ran this from my Kempville management group, by default, we're going to fetch the data from Kempville. There are good reasons to fetch and query other management groups. We'll talk about that a bit more later. So let's just look at what we get when we have a class here. So we have the properties, and that's something you're probably familiar with from MP Studio. I did actually want to show, I keep forgetting that I really want to show this, that if we look at a monitor here, we actually show the product knowledge here as well, so you can look at that. We don't need to go back. Well, let's go back to classes because there's a couple things I do want to show there. So within a class, you can also look at the hierarchy. Classes have base classes, which are derived from base classes, etc. This will show you that hierarchy very easily. Now, in these things, anything that is underlined is a clickable link. So if you want to look at the local application abstract class, you can click that, and there you are, that quickly, and of course you can come back. There's, for a lot of these hierarchies, and I'm just going to quickly see if I've got the list in front of me. Yeah, so For classes, management packs, folders, monitors, relationships, component types, and data types, you can show the hierarchy. Those all have sort of a child and parent relationship, and it makes some sense. And for many of them, you can hold down, for instance, the control key when you click this button, and it'll produce more information. So this water node class actually has these 6 relationships. Here's a list of the properties of it. Then we have a list of who discovers it, which discoveries are going to produce that. The aggregate monitors that are used for roll-ups, dependency monitors, module types, secure reference overrides, rules, etc. All that information is there. Within each individual element, the buttons that follow it let you find things very quickly. So if you want to see what the base class is, it's Windows Local Application. You can click that button and you can go to Windows Local Application. You can look at the instances, and let's choose service here because we actually have multiple instances here. So this will show instances. So what this has done is it's gone out and gotten all of the instances of that class type from the Kempville management group. That's the currently selected management group here, and it shows them. If I select one and click OK, it shows this instance dialog. You'll see this a bit more. So this shows the class name, some of the common properties. It shows the health state and maintenance mode, a couple other properties, and then it shows relationships. So subscriptions, hosts, services. This is a service. So that's the subscription. If you clicked on that, it'll drill through to that, that service. And then we have the properties and the current values for that class. And then we show the classes that it's derived from. So many things derive eventually from config item, which has the object status. Almost everything derives eventually from entity, which has a display name. And this is hosted by, and so we show some hosting information here as well. If we look at a group, we can show the group members. And so this is the 3 management servers that are a member of the M365 resource pool that's being used. You also have lists of what things are referenced by. So you can see that there's a rule override that's been applied to this. It makes it very easy to find that sort of stuff. There are, on a per entry basis, there's additional information. So for instance, we have relationships here, properties discovered. Who references licensing? Well, it's used by a couple of aggregate monitors. It's mentioned in a module type, a couple of rules, a couple of unit monitors, and even a view. And if we're looking at that view, we can see the hierarchy. Oh, sorry. We can see the. Let's go down to that view. Oh, the view is shown by. Is that the one I want to see? I've got it wrong here. Now there's our folder. So here's our views being shown in the Microsoft 365 thing. So that's a quick rundown through it. So let's look at some of the examples. If I come back to my management server and look at active alerts, we'll see these M365 incidents. And it says the alert rule is Microsoft 365 Incidents Alerting Rule. That's a display name, and it could be localized. But one of the easy things we can do is we can simply copy, paste that in here. It's not going to find it because it's filtered on classes. Let's filter on all elements. And then we have the rule. And we also have 3 overrides that actually use that same text in their display name. And if we look at this, we'll see this for the rule that it's referenced by 3 overrides. That's exactly what we saw there. So we can search for any of the text. The other thing you can do is search by the ID. So if you've got an event log entry that says some workflow failed or something like that, you can just search by the ID, and it turns out it's the unit monitor. The other thing you can do is you can find classes by instance. So if you have, again, it's usually event log entries that show an instance ID, you can do that, and it'll tell us, in this case, that instance ID is this M365 service for Intune. The other case I was going to show is if we go to the event logs here, and we're looking at this, it tells us that there's a event log, it's behind. This is from a couple of days ago. But all it tells us is that it's Ethernet. It doesn't tell us what machine it's on. The instance ID gives us that information. So if we copy that instance ID, come back here, paste it in, we find out that it's the Microsoft Windows Server 10.0 network adapter. The path tells us that it's on this CampOM 2019B. That's my second management server here. You can see the relationship here. It's derived from a server network adapter. That's the non-version specific, which is derived from a Windows network adapter used for both client and server logical device configuration. And of course, it's hosted on a Windows computer. That pretty much runs down what I want to show. There's a lot of opportunity to find things here. And the other thing I need to mention here is this is a first version of SCOM Explorer. When you're playing around with it, when you're trying to use it, you may find a bug, heaven forbid, but let us know and we'll fix those immediately. You also may find areas where you think things could be done better. We like hearing about those. The other thing is you may find that there's something else you want to do that you think this could be extended to help with. Please let us know. We love hearing about those sorts of things. And again, we try to take a general request from someone and turn it into something much more, a specific request from someone and try to make it much more general. This came partially out of looking at override MPs. Let's just filter this. I want to look at the overrides here, for instance. Did a lot of work with a customer a couple of years ago who was moving from 2012 to 2019, I believe it was. They had hundreds of overrides for specific instances that they didn't know whether it was applicable in their new management group, whether it's for computers that have been retired, etc. They needed to know what to bring forward and what they could throw away. And so looking up from just a context instance to see what something is was a major problem for them. But with the SCOM Explorer, you immediately know what this is. It's my vMic 2016. So that's a Windows Server 2016 standard. We can find out all the properties here, and we can know whether this is still an applicable override that we care to move forward on. And so that was the genesis, to a large degree, for SCOM Explorer. Let's come up with a general way to find everything.
So, one of the questions we got. Thanks. I mean, great demo, Mike. Thanks. Some great new features across the family of products. And I wanted to share with many of you are MP Author users, and again, we appreciate and enjoy working with all of you. There are upgrades available to MP Author Pro and MP Studio, and our customers, we keep in regular contact with our customers and get a lot of feedback from our customers in terms of the value add they see in our licensed products. And really, there are sort of four main categories where we get feedback. One is in authoring, and I'll highlight here fragments. Are just a great way to ensure consistent creation of management packs, consistent MP elements, including discoveries, rules, and monitors. In many cases, customers find just yesterday, customers said 99% of what they need to do is covered by fragments. And our licensed products allow you to not only leverage fragments, but also create fragments. So you can create a library of fragments for use within your organization. Managing overrides is a very common scenario for customers, whether they're upgrading SCOM or moving to a new environment. The ability to easily find, move, report on all customizations is done with a couple of clicks. The source control database, I know Mike didn't really touch on that too much with MP Studio, but it really enables a number of other capabilities, including version control, comparison of new management pack releases by Microsoft or other vendors. It, in many cases, is used as a single source of truth for management packs across an organization. It allows, for example, deploying a management pack across multiple management groups with a couple of clicks. And being source control, it also allows you to see who made what change and when they made the change, and also why they made the change. And something else that we enable with across all of our products is automation. And so we provide interfaces, whether it's PowerShell or REST API, interfaces to allow you to automate and automate any of those capabilities. And it can, for example, speed up provisioning of new infrastructure by automating the development and deployment of management packs. So those are some of the things that we hear about from our customers in terms of why they use some of our licensed products. And moving on, just before we talk about the availability of version 11, I just wanted to touch on Silect Operations Portal, which is another product that fits in this portfolio of solutions for SCOM. It's a self-service web portal for organizations using SCOM, which allows delivery of a highly curated, customized set of capabilities for groups who work with SCOM. And one of the common scenarios we get from our customers are for example, application owners. They want to deliver a curated authoring experience using fragments to application owners to allow them to build their own management packs, to be able to view monitoring configurations for applications or infrastructure that they are responsible for. And the Silect Operations Portal does a great job of allowing that to happen. And as well as we bundle in a number of other features in there as well. And just to give you a sort of a preview, I'm not going to demonstrate the portal just because we're running out of time. But if you look at the capabilities on the screenshot, you'll see they have the ability to view management packs. They can create new management packs using fragments. And again, using fragments, if you're not looking at fragments and not using them today to author management packs, whether you're using Visual Studio or using our products, it really is a great way to author management packs, and really encourage you to take a look at fragments. And if I'm not mistaken, Kevin Holman just released some new fragments, I believe yesterday as well. So that's a library of fragments, a library of great SCOM workflows that continually gets updated. You can edit management packs using the portal, whether they're installed in your SCOM environment, whether they're creating overrides, or whether they're in the store database. We give you that editing capability. You can set maintenance schedules. You can look at agent workflow, and we continue to add new features and new self-service features to the portal. Okay, and last but certainly not least, the version 11 release itself. The release notices are going to be going out early next week, and that'll have all the information you need to be able to download and make use of the products. We do provide in-place upgrades, so whether you're using MP Author, the free edition, or Pro or MP Studio, it's a next done type of upgrade for your environment. I do want to mention as well that we are offering special pricing for a limited time. So if you are interested in our licensed products, contact us at info@silect.com. We do have special pricing from now until the end of November, and we're also including at no cost our MP authoring training course. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time today. Mike, thank you for the demonstration. We do have a couple minutes left. If there are any questions that we can answer for you, I would encourage you to use that Q&A window. And once again, keep an eye out early next week for that version 11 release notice.